Physics surrendered to adrenaline the moment a homeless woman dove into the ice-black East River, defying the 4-minute window of survival dictated by the freezing water. Though she weighed barely 110 pounds, she managed the impossible, dragging a 200-pound man from the wreckage of a sinking armored sedan beneath the Brooklyn Bridge. However, the arrival of paramedics brought a terrifying clarity to her heroism. The man wasn't just drowning, he was armed, wearing an Armani jacket over a shoulder holster. She hadn't just saved a civilian, she had pulled Dominic Rinaldi, the head of the East Coast Syndicate, back from the dead, and in doing so, committed the most dangerous mistake of her life. The rain in New York City doesn't wash things clean, it just makes the grime slicker. For Cassidy Miller, the rain was an enemy. It turned her cardboard mattress into pulp and soaked through the 3 layers of thrift store wool she wore. At 2:00 a.m., the underside of the overpass near the FDR Drive was a wind tunnel of freezing mist. Cassidy pulled her knees to her chest, shivering violently. It had been 6 months since she lost the apartment in Queens, 6 months since the nursing license was revoked, a misunderstanding that ruined her life, but that's a story for another time. Tonight, her only concern was hypothermia. She was watching the headlights of cars streak by on the wet asphalt, hypnotized by the rhythm. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Then came the screech. It wasn't a normal braking sound. It was the tearing of metal and rubber, a guttural scream of a machine losing control. Cassidy looked up just in time to see black sedan, heavy, expensive, tinted windows careen off the guardrail. Sparks showered like fireworks as the car flipped over the barrier, hung in the air for a terrifying second, and then plummeted nose first into the dark, churning water of the East River below. The splash was deafening, followed by an even more terrifying silence. Cassidy didn't think. If she had thought, she would have remembered she was weak from hunger. She would have remembered the freezing temperature of the water. Instead, instinct took over. The nurse in her, buried under months of homelessness and shame, woke up. She scrambled down the rocky embankment, slipping on wet moss, tearing the skin on her palms. "Hey!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "Can you hear me?" No answer. The car was bobbing, heavy nose dipping fast. The taillights glowed eerie red beneath the surface. Cassidy kicked off her heavy boots. She took a breath that burned her lungs and dove. The shock of the cold was like a physical blow. It seized her muscles, threatening to stop her heart right there. She forced her eyes open in the murky darkness. The car was sinking rapidly, dragging the river sludge with it. She swam toward the driver's side. The window was shattered, likely from the impact. She reached inside, her fingers brushing against expensive leather, then a suit jacket. She grabbed the shoulder. It was like pulling on a statue. The man was massive. Dead weight. "He's too heavy," her mind screamed. "Let go or you drown." She planted her feet against the doorframe of the sinking car, grabbed the man's collar with both hands, and heaved. A stream of bubbles escaped his mouth. He was still alive, but barely. With a primal grunt of effort that expelled the last of her oxygen, she yanked. The seatbelt must have been cut or unbuckled because he slid free. But as she pulled him out, the weight of him dragged her down. He was easily 200 pounds of muscle. Cassidy kicked frantically, her vision tunneling, her lungs burning for air. She hooked her arm under his armpit, clawing at the water with her free hand. They broke the surface with a gasp. "Help!" she choked out. But the highway above was empty. She dragged him to the muddy bank, inch by agonizing inch. Her muscles trembled so hard she thought they might snap. Finally, she collapsed on the rocks, hauling his legs out of the water. She rolled him onto his back. In the dim light of the street lamps above, She saw his face. He was in his mid-30s, with a sharp jawline covered in dark stubble and a scar running through his left eyebrow. He was devastatingly handsome, in a brutal kind of way. But Cassidy wasn't looking at his face. She was looking at his chest. It wasn't moving. "No, no, no," she whispered. She tilted his head back, cleared his airway, and pinched his nose. She placed her mouth over his and breathed. 1, 2. She interlocked her fingers over his sternum and began compressions. Push, push, push. "Come on. Don't you die on me," she grunted, putting her entire meager body weight into the rhythm. "I did not just freeze to death for a corpse." Minutes felt like hours. Her arms were on fire. Just as she was about to give up, his body jolted. A violent cough racked his frame, and he vomited river water onto the stones. He gasped, a jagged, desperate sound. Cassidy fell back, panting, wiping the sludge from her face. "Okay," she wheezed. "You're okay." The man groaned, his hand flying to his waist. He was reaching for something instinctively. Cassidy's eyes followed the movement. His jacket had fallen open. There, strapped in a shoulder holster, was a matte black semi-automatic pistol. And on his wrist, revealed by the wet shirt clinging to his skin, was a tattoo, a complex geometric lion, the sigil of the Rinaldi crime family. Cassidy froze. Every street person in New York knew that symbol. You didn't mess with the Rinaldis. You didn't look at them. And you certainly didn't touch them. The man's eyes flew open. They were the color of steel, blown wide with shock and adrenaline. He focused on her, a shivering, wet, dirty girl in oversized clothes. "Who?" His voice was gravel. "Who are you?" "Nobody," Cassidy stammered, scrambling backward, her survival instinct shifting from save him to run. I pulled you out." He tried to sit up, but groaned and collapsed back. "The car," he rasped. "My phone." "It's gone," she said. "It sank." He cursed, a string of Italian obscenities. He looked at her again, his gaze sharpening, assessing her despite his condition. "You saved me?" "I have to go," Cassidy said, standing up on shaky legs. She knew what happened to witnesses. "I didn't see anything, I swear." "Wait," he commanded. It wasn't a request. He reached into his pocket, his hand shaking, and pulled out a soaked money clip. "Take it." "I don't want your money," she said, backing away toward the shadows of the bridge. "I said take it," he barked, trying to rise. Before she could answer, tires screeched on the road above. Not one car, but 3. Doors slammed. Heavy footsteps came running down the embankment. Beams of tactical flashlights cut through the rain. "Dom! Dominic!" a voice roared. "Down here!" the man on the ground yelled. Cassidy panicked. If those were his enemies, she was dead. If they were his friends, she might still be dead just for being here. She turned and sprinted into the darkness of the underpass, using the concrete pillars as cover. "Boss, we got you." "Forget me," Dominic's voice carried over the wind, weak but furious. "Find the girl. Find her now." Cassidy didn't wait to hear the rest. She ran until her lungs burned, ran until the adrenaline crashed, and then she hid inside a dumpster 3 blocks away, clutching her shivering knees, praying they wouldn't look in the trash. She didn't know it yet, but Dominic Rinaldi wasn't looking for her to kill her. He was a man who lived by a code, a life for a life. And whether she wanted it or not, the homeless girl now owned the soul of the city's most dangerous man. The next 3 days were a blur of paranoia for Cassidy. She moved from her usual spot near the FDR Drive to a denser, more dangerous encampment near Port Authority. She cut her hair with a jagged piece of glass she found, chopping her long, matted brown locks into a rough, chin-length bob. She rubbed dirt on her face to obscure her features. She kept hearing footsteps behind her. Every black SUV made her heart stop. She was scavenging for half-eaten sandwiches in a trash can behind a deli on 8th Avenue when the shadow fell over her. It wasn't the police. It was a man in a suit that cost more than she used to make in a year as a nurse. He was huge, bald, and wore an earpiece. "Cassidy Miller?" he asked. His voice was low, polite, and terrifying. Cassidy dropped the bag of trash. "I'm not her," she lied, backing up until she hit the brick wall. "Leave me alone. We checked your fingerprints from the guardrail," the man said calmly. "And the nursing license database. We know who you are. We know about the incident at St. Jude's Hospital. We know you're innocent of that negligence charge, by the way." Cassidy stopped breathing. "What do you want?" "Mr. Rinaldi requests your presence." "Requests?" she scoffed, though her voice trembled. "Or demands?" The giant man stepped aside, gesturing to the curb. A black Rolls-Royce Phantom was idling there, looking absurdly out of place amidst the garbage and grime of the alley. The back door opened. Sitting inside was Dominic Rinaldi. He looked different than he had by the river. He was clean-shaven, his arm in a sling, dressed in a fresh charcoal suit. But the steel eyes were the same. "Get in, Cassidy," he said. "If I don't?" "Then you stay here eating garbage," he said flatly. "Or you get in, get a hot shower, a meal, and we discuss how I repay a debt." Cassidy looked at the dumpster, then at the Rolls-Royce. She was starving. Her socks were still damp from the river 3 days ago. She had nothing to lose but a life she already hated. She walked forward and slid onto the soft leather seat. The interior smelled of sandalwood and expensive scotch. Dominic pressed a button, and the partition slid up, sealing them off from the driver. "You run fast," he noted, looking at her without disgust, which surprised her. Most people looked at her like she was a contagion. "I learned to run," she muttered, pulling her dirty coat tighter around herself. "Why did you hunt me down?" "I don't like owing people," Dominic said. He reached into a cooler next to him and pulled out a bottle of water and a wrapped sandwich. He handed them to her. "Eat." She tore into the sandwich, roast beef and arugula, trying to maintain some dignity but failing. He watched her eat, his expression unreadable. "You saved my life," he said after she finished. "My men tell me the car doors were jammed. You must have pulled with incredible force. You're strong for someone, in your position." "Adrenaline," she said, wiping her mouth. "Can I go now? You gave me a sandwich. We're even." Dominic actually laughed. It was a dry, dark sound. "A sandwich for a life? You sell yourself short, Miss Miller." "No. We are not even." The car came to a smooth stop. Cassidy looked out the tinted window. They weren't at a police station or a warehouse. They were entering the underground garage of the Obsidian Tower, the most exclusive penthouse building in Manhattan. "Where are we?" "Home," Dominic said. "Yours for the foreseeable future." "I'm not your prisoner," she snapped. "No." He turned to her, his face serious. "You're my guest. But you need to understand something, Cassidy. The accident wasn't an accident. Someone cut my brake lines. Someone wants me dead. And now that you're the one who pulled me out, they might think you saw something. They might think you know who did it." The blood drained from Cassidy's face. "You are a loose end," Dominic said softly. "On the street, you're a target. Here, under my protection, you're safe. I'm offering you a job, a place to stay, until I find out who tried to kill me." "What kind of job?" she asked suspiciously. Dominic looked at her bruised hands, the hands of a former nurse. "My private medical staff. I can't go to a hospital with gunshot wounds or suspicious injuries. I need someone discreet. Someone who exists outside the system. Someone who saved me once already. The door opened. The bald bodyguard waited. Cassidy stepped out into the pristine garage. She looked at her reflection in the car window, dirty, ragged, broken. Then she looked at Dominic Rinaldi, the Mafia prince, offering her a deal with the devil. "Fine," she whispered. Dominic nodded. "Welcome to the family, Cassidy. Try not to break anything." The elevator ride to the penthouse took 40 seconds. Cassidy counted them to keep from hyperventilating. The brushed steel doors slid open to reveal a space that was less like an apartment and more like a modern art museum, cold, expansive, and aggressively expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline, the very city that had chewed Cassidy up and spit her out. From up here, the freezing rain looked like harmless glitter. "Silas, show Miss Miller to the guest suite," Dominic ordered, favoring his injured arm, "and get Marta to bring her. Everything. Clothes, toiletries. Burn what she's wearing." Silas, the bald giant, nodded. "This way." Cassidy hesitated, looking at Dominic. He was already walking away toward a set of double mahogany doors, pulling his phone out with his good hand. He didn't look back. He had acquired her, placed her, and now he was moving on to the next problem. The guest suite was larger than the entire apartment Cassidy had lost 6 months ago. The bathroom was a sanctuary of marble and gold. When Silas closed the door, leaving her alone, Cassidy stared at herself in the massive vanity mirror. She looked like a ghost. Her skin was grey with grime, her eyes sunken and rimmed with red, her chopped hair matted. She stripped off the damp layers of wool and denim, piling them on the floor. Stepping into the shower, she turned the handle. Hot water. Unlimited hot water. She stood under the spray for 20 minutes, scrubbing until her skin was raw, watching the grey water swirl down the drain. She washed the river sludge from her hair, the dirt from her fingernails, and the smell of the dumpster from her skin. When she finally stepped out and wrapped herself in a plush white robe, she felt lighter, but also more fragile. Without the layers of dirt and clothes, she felt exposed. There was a knock at the door. A stern-faced woman in her 60s entered. This was Marta. She carried a basket of clothes. "Mr. Rinaldi ordered these from a stylist," Marta said, her voice devoid of warmth. She placed the basket on the bed. "He expects you in the library in 1 hour. Do not be late. He hates lateness." Marta left as quickly as she arrived. Cassidy looked through the basket. No heels, no cocktail dresses. It was high-end casual wear, cashmere sweaters, soft joggers, silk blouses. Everything was in muted tones: slate, charcoal, navy. Cassidy dressed in a pair of soft black trousers and a grey cashmere sweater. She dried her hair, which now fell in a choppy, textured bob around her jaw. Without the grime, her features were striking. High cheekbones and wide, observant hazel eyes. She looked like a different person. She looked like the woman she used to be before the world fell apart. She found the library by following the sound of voices. "I don't care what the police report says, Luca." Dominic's voice boomed from behind the door. The brake line didn't just snap. It was cut, precise, clean. "Then we hit the mechanics," a second voice answered, younger, more aggressive. "We break fingers until someone talks." "No," Dominic countered. "If you go in breaking fingers, the rat goes underground. We need to be smart." Cassidy knocked on the open door frame. Both men turned. Dominic was sitting behind a massive ebony desk, a glass of amber liquid in front of him. Standing by the window was a younger man, leaner than Dominic, with restless energy and a scar running down his neck. This was Luca Vanzetti, Dominic's underboss and cousin. For a moment, silence filled the room. Dominic stared at her. The recognition took a second to land. The shivering, dirty creature from the river was gone. "Cassidy," Dominic said, his voice dropping an octave. "You wanted to see me?" she asked, crossing her arms defensively. Luca scoffed, looking her up and down. "This is the mermaid? She looks like a stiff breeze would blow her over." "She dragged me 50 yards through mud, Luca." "Watch your mouth," Dominic warned. He gestured to a leather chair. "Sit. We need to establish ground rules." Cassidy sat, sitting upright, her nurse's posture returning. "Rules, okay. Rule 1. You do not leave this building without Silas. Ever," Dominic said. "Rule 2. You do not speak to anyone outside. No phone calls to family. No emails." "I don't have family," Cassidy said flatly. "And I don't have a phone." "Good," Dominic said. Rule 3. You are here as my private nurse. That means you manage my health and the health of my inner circle. No questions asked. You don't ask how we got the wounds. You just stitch them up. Can you handle that?" Cassidy looked from Dominic to Luca. She saw the bulge of a gun under Luca's jacket. She saw the pain lines around Dominic's eyes. He was hurting more than he let on. "I was an ER nurse at St. Jude's for 5 years, Cassidy said. "I've pulled bullets out of gangbangers and cops alike. Blood is blood, Mr. Rinaldi." "Dominic," he corrected. "Call me Dominic." He tried to shift in his chair and winced, a sharp intake of breath hissing through his teeth. Cassidy was out of her chair instantly. Instinct overrode fear. She walked around the desk to him. "It's your shoulder. The dislocation?" "It's fine," Dominic gritted out. "It's not fine. You're guarding it." "Take off the jacket," she commanded. Luca stepped forward, his hand twitching toward his waist. "Hey, watch it." "Back off, Luca," Dominic snapped. He looked at Cassidy, amused by her sudden authority. He shrugged off the jacket with a grimace, then unbuttoned his dress shirt. His right shoulder was swollen, bruising blooming across the pectoral muscle. It wasn't just a dislocation. The rotator cuff was severely strained from the impact of the steering wheel. Cassidy's hands moved with practiced efficiency. She palpated the joint, her fingers cool against his feverish skin. Dominic watched her face. She wasn't looking at him with fear anymore. She was looking at the injury with clinical detachment. It was calming. "You need ice, anti-inflammatories and a sling," she stated. "And you need to stop moving it, or you'll need surgery. Do you have a med kit?" "There's a room," Dominic said, "behind the bookcase on the east wall. Punch code 1985. Cassidy raised an eyebrow. "A secret medical room?" "Hazards of the trade." Cassidy walked to the bookcase, entered the code, and the shelf clicked open. Inside was a fully stocked trauma bay. Oxygen, IVs, sutures, a defibrillator. It was better equipped than some rural clinics. She grabbed a sling and some ibuprofen. When she returned, she efficiently bound Dominic's arm. She could feel his eyes on her face, analyzing her. "There," she said, tightening the strap. "Keep it on." "You have a gentle touch, Cassidy," Dominic murmured, his face inches from hers. The proximity hit her then. The smell of his sandalwood cologne mixed with the faint metallic tang of the gun oil in the room. He was dangerous, lethal, and for the first time in 6 months, she felt undeniably, terrifyingly alive. "I'm just doing the job," she whispered, stepping back. Luca watched the exchange, his eyes narrowed into slits. He didn't like this. He didn't like strays, and he certainly didn't like the way the boss looked at this one. A week passed. Life in the penthouse fell into a strange, gilded rhythm. Cassidy spent her mornings organizing the medical bay, which she learned was stocked by a crooked pharmacist in Jersey, and her afternoons reading in the library. She learned the players. Luca was the muscle and the noise. He was Dominic's cousin, volatile and ambitious. He treated Cassidy like a piece of furniture, ignoring her unless he needed an aspirin. Silas was the silent shadow. He followed Dominic everywhere. Cassidy noticed he slept in a chair by the front door, never fully relaxing. And Dominic was an enigma. By day, he ran a shipping and logistics empire that spanned the eastern seaboard. He took calls in Italian, negotiated unions, and moved millions of dollars with a nod. By night, the darkness crept in. He would come home exhausted, the weight of the crown heavy on him. He sought her out, not for medical reasons, but for company. One rainy Tuesday night, Cassidy was in the kitchen making tea. She couldn't sleep. The silence of the penthouse was too loud compared to the noise of the street she was used to. Dominic walked in. He was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair messy. He looked younger like this. "Can't sleep?" he asked, leaning against the marble island. "It's too quiet up here," Cassidy admitted. "I'm used to sirens." "I can have Luca scream outside your door if it helps," Dominic joked. A faint smile touched his lips. It was the first genuine smile she'd seen. He poured himself a glass of water. "I looked into your record, Cassidy." Cassidy froze, her grip on the mug tightening. "I told you. I lost my license." "I know why you lost it," Dominic said softly. Dr. Alistair Thorne. He prescribed the wrong dosage to a pediatric patient. The kid went into cardiac arrest. You caught the mistake and saved the kid, but Thorne altered the charts to make it look like you made the error. He had tenure and a rich father. You were the expendable nurse. Tears pricked Cassidy's eyes. She blinked them back furiously. "You read the transcripts?" "I read everything," Dominic said. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming. "You didn't fight it." "I couldn't," she whispered. "He threatened to sue me for defamation. I didn't have money for a lawyer. I lost my job, then my apartment. It's a domino effect. Once you fall, gravity takes over." "Gravity," Dominic repeated. "It's a bitch." He reached out, his hand hovering near her face. Then he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her jaw. "You're not falling anymore, Cassidy. Thorne, he's a problem I can solve." "No," she said quickly, pulling back. "I don't want you to kill him." Dominic chuckled darkly. "I don't kill everyone, Cassidy. Sometimes I just ruin them. Ideally, legally. I own 3 hospitals in the tri-state area. I can pull strings." "Why?" she asked. "Why do this for me?" "Because you saved me when you owed me nothing," he said intensely. "In my world, loyalty is bought. Yours was free. That makes it priceless." The moment was shattered by the buzzing of Dominic's phone on the counter. He glanced at the screen, and his face hardened. The softness vanished. "I have to take this. Go to bed, Cassidy. Lock your door." Cassidy did as she was told, but she didn't go to sleep. She waited until his footsteps receded down the hall toward his study. Curiosity was a dangerous thing, but paranoia was worse. Dominic was being hunted, and if he died, she was back on the street, or dead herself. She needed to know who the threat was. She crept down the hallway, her bare feet silent on the hardwood. The study door was cracked open an inch. "Check the mechanic," Luca's voice was coming from the speakerphone. "The guy is dead, Dom. 2 bullets in the back of the head. Found him in a chop shop in the Bronx." "Dead ends," Dominic growled. "Whoever paid him to cut my brakes is covering their tracks." "There's something else," Luca said. "The security footage from the garage where your car was kept the night before the crash. It's missing. Deleted." "Only 3 people have access to those servers," Dominic said. "Me, you, and Silas." Are you accusing me? Luca's voice spiked with aggression. I'm stating facts. Dominic slammed his hand on the desk. Someone on the inside let the mechanic in. Someone inside wants to take the throne, Luca. Cassidy held her breath. The internal war was heating up. It's not me, Dom. I'm blood, Luca said, his voice lowering. But you brought a stranger into the house. The nurse. Maybe she's a plant. She was homeless, Luca. She pulled me out of a sinking car. Perfect cover, Luca argued. The angel of the streets. Maybe she didn't save you. Maybe she was there to make sure you died. And when you didn't, she improvised. Why was she under that bridge at that time? Cassidy's heart hammered against her ribs. Luca was poisoning him against her. Enough, Dominic said wearily. I trust her. That will be your funeral, Luca spat. The line went dead. Cassidy scurried back to her room, her mind racing. Luca was trying to frame her. Or was he just paranoid? The next morning, the tension was palpable. Dominic left early for a meeting at the docks. Cassidy was left alone in the penthouse with the cleaning staff. She went to the medical bay to inventory the supplies. She was checking the vials of morphine kept in the locked cabinet. Dominic took a low dose for the shoulder pain at night. She picked up the vial he used yesterday. It looked normal. But Cassidy was a nurse. She noticed details. The rubber stopper had a tiny, almost microscopic pinprick in it. A second puncture mark, right next to where she had drawn the dose yesterday. She hadn't made that second mark. She held the vial up to the light. The liquid seemed slightly less viscous than morphine should be, or maybe slightly discolored. She grabbed a syringe, drew a small amount, and dripped it onto a pH testing strip she used for urine analysis. It didn't react like morphine. She accessed the small digital lab analyzer, a piece of tech worth $50,000 that Dominic kept for discreet blood work. She ran a sample. The results beeped 3 minutes later. Result: digoxin. Cassidy gasped, dropping the vial. It didn't break on the carpet, but her hands shook violently. Digoxin was a heart medication. In small doses, it helped heart failure. In high doses, or given to someone with a healthy heart, it caused cardiac arrest. It mimicked a heart attack perfectly. It was a poisoner's favorite weapon because it often went undetected in standard autopsies if you weren't looking for it. Someone had swapped the morphine. If she had given Dominic his injection tonight, he would have gone into cardiac arrest in his sleep. And since she was the nurse administering it, she would be the one holding the murder weapon. It was the perfect frame job. Looking for something. Cassidy spun around. Standing in the doorway of the medical bay was Silas, the bald giant. He usually looked stoic, bored even. But now his face was twisted into something dark. He was wearing latex gloves. Silas, Cassidy stammered, hiding the vial behind her back. I was just checking the inventory. You're a smart girl, Cassidy, Silas said, stepping into the room and closing the door behind him. The lock clicked. Too smart. Luca said you were a problem. I told him we could just pin the car accident on you, but no. You had to survive. You had to save him. Cassidy's blood ran cold. It wasn't Luca. It was Silas, the bodyguard, the man who stood by the door, the man with access to the security servers. You cut the brakes, she whispered. The Rinaldi family is weak under Dominic, Silas said, pulling a syringe from his pocket. He wants to go legit. He wants to stop the drug running. Luca understands that this is a business. Luca promised me a seat at the table, not just a place at the door. Luca knows. Luca is the architect, Silas smiled. I'm just the mechanic. He lunged. Cassidy didn't think. She reacted. She threw the glass vial of digoxin at his face. It shattered against his forehead, the liquid stinging his eyes. Silas roared, wiping his eyes. But he didn't stop. He grabbed Cassidy by the throat and slammed her against the metal cabinets. "You're going to give him his shot tonight," Silas hissed, his thumbs digging into her windpipe. "And when he dies, we'll find the empty vial in your room. The junkie nurse who relapsed and killed her patient. It's poetic." Cassidy clawed at his hands, black spots dancing in her vision. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't scream. Her hand flailed blindly on the counter behind her. Her fingers brushed against a scalpel she had left out from cleaning. She gripped the handle. "I survived the street," she thought. "I survived the river. I am not dying in a penthouse." With a guttural choke, she drove the scalpel downward, plunging it into Silas's forearm. He howled, releasing her. Cassidy dropped to the floor, gasping for air, and scrambled toward the door. She fumbled with the lock, her fingers slippery with sweat. "You bitch!" Silas screamed, blood dripping from his arm. He charged again. She got the door open and tumbled into the hallway, screaming at the top of her lungs. "Marta, help!" But the penthouse was silent. Marta was gone. It was just her, the traitor, and 40 floors of empty air. The hallway stretched out like a killing floor. Cassidy sprinted toward the elevator, her bare feet slapping against the polished marble. She slammed her hand against the call button, praying for the chime. The light above the doors remained dark. System lockout. Silas must have disabled the elevators before he came for her. She was trapped, 40 floors up, in a glass cage, with a monster. "There's nowhere to go, Cassidy!" Silas's voice boomed from the medical bay, followed by the heavy thud of his boots. He was angry now, and the pain from the scalpel in his arm would only make him faster, fueled by adrenaline. Cassidy abandoned the elevator. She needed a weapon. She needed cover. She banked left, running toward the kitchen. It was an industrial-grade space, full of stainless steel and sharp objects. She grabbed a heavy cast-iron skillet from the drying rack. It was heavy, unwieldy, but better than nothing. She heard Silas in the main foyer. He was moving methodically, checking rooms. "Think," she told herself. "He's bigger, stronger, trained. You can't fight him. You have to outsmart him." She looked at the gas range. An idea, desperate and dangerous, sparked in her mind. She turned on the gas for all 6 burners, but didn't light them. The hiss of escaping gas filled the silence. Then she grabbed a bottle of high-proof vodka from the counter and smashed it on the floor near the entrance of the kitchen. She retreated into the pantry, leaving the door cracked just an inch. Ideally, the smell would warn him off. Or, if he was stupid enough to fire a gun in here, he'd blow them both to kingdom come. It was a bluff, a stalling tactic. "I can hear you breathing, nurse," Silas taunted. He was closer now. He stepped into the kitchen doorway. He paused, sniffing the air. "Gas? Really? You think I'm going to shoot and blow us up? I don't need a gun to snap your neck." He holstered his weapon. He stepped over the broken glass and spilled vodka, grinning. The blood from his arm dripped onto the pristine white tiles. Drip, drip, drip. Cassidy's heart hammered so hard she felt sick. Her trap had failed. He wasn't scared. She burst from the pantry, swinging the cast-iron skillet with both hands. Silas saw it coming. He caught her wrist mid-swing, stopping the heavy pan inches from his face. The impact jarred her arm to the shoulder. He laughed, a wet, ugly sound, and backhanded her across the face. Cassidy flew backward, crashing into the island. The skillet clattered to the floor. Her vision swam. She tasted copper. Silas loomed over her, ripping the latex gloves off his hands. "Luca was right. You're a pest. A rat." He reached for her throat again. Cassidy kicked out, her heel connecting with his wounded forearm. Silas roared in pain, stumbling back for a fraction of a second. It was all she needed. She rolled away, grabbing a chef's knife from the magnetic strip on the island. She scrambled to her feet, backing up toward the living room. "Stay back!" she screamed, brandishing the knife. "You don't have the guts!" Silas growled, stalking her. They circled each other in the massive living room. The panoramic window behind Cassidy showed the darkened city, indifferent to her terror. Suddenly, the front door's electronic lock chirped. Beep, beep, beep. Silas froze. His eyes darted to the door. The heavy mahogany door swung open. Dominic walked in, shaking rain from an umbrella. "Silas!" Dominic called out, not looking up yet. "Why are the elevators locked out? I had to use the service override code." Silas didn't hesitate. He pulled his gun, aiming not at Dominic, but at Cassidy. "Don't move, boss," Silas shouted. "She's crazy. She attacked me. She's a plant." Dominic stopped dead. He took in the scene, the overturned furniture, the blood on the floor, Silas, bleeding and frantic, pointing a gun at Cassidy. Cassidy, bruised, lip split, holding a kitchen knife with shaking hands. "Put the gun down, Silas," Dominic said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "She tried to kill me." Silas lied, sweat beading on his bald head. "I caught her tampering with your meds. She's working for the Colombians, or the feds. He's lying," Cassidy screamed, tears finally spilling over. "It's digoxin. He swapped your morphine for digoxin. He's working for Luca." The name hung in the air like smoke. Dominic's eyes flickered to Silas. "Luca!" "She's lying!" Silas yelled, his finger tightening on the trigger. "I'm protecting you." "If you were protecting me," Dominic said, taking a slow step forward, "your gun would be pointed at the intruder, but it's pointed at the witness." Silas realized his mistake. His eyes widened. He shifted his aim toward Dominic. "I'm sorry, Dom. It's nothing personal. Luca just pays better." Bang! The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. Cassidy screamed and dropped to the floor, but Dominic didn't fall. Silas dropped the gun. He looked down at his chest, where a red flower was rapidly blooming on his white shirt. He looked back at Dominic, confusion in his eyes. Dominic stood with his arm extended, a smoking pistol in his hand. He had drawn from his shoulder holster with a speed that defied the injury he was nursing. Silas crumpled to his knees, then fell face forward onto the expensive Persian rug. Silence returned to the penthouse, heavy and ringing. Dominic didn't look at the body. He holstered his gun and walked straight to Cassidy. He dropped to his knees, ignoring the pain in his bad shoulder. "Cassidy," he said, his voice raw. He reached out, but hesitated, as if afraid she might break. "Did he touch you?" Cassidy dropped the knife. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. He tried to choke me. He said Luca is the architect." Dominic's face was a mask of cold fury, but his hands were gentle as he cupped her face. He used his thumb to wipe the blood from her split lip. "I know," he whispered. "I know." He pulled her into his chest. Cassidy buried her face in his coat, smelling the rain and the gunpowder. And finally, she let herself cry. The cleanup crew arrived 20 minutes later. They were efficient, silent men who wrapped Silas's body in plastic and scrubbed the rug as if it were a spilled glass of wine. Dominic sat on the leather sofa, staring at the unlit fireplace. He held a glass of whiskey, but he hadn't taken a sip. Cassidy emerged from the bathroom. She had cleaned the blood off her face and changed into fresh clothes. The bruises on her neck were already darkening, ugly purple fingerprints against her pale skin. She walked over to him. "Let me check your shoulder. The recoil must have hurt it." Dominic looked up. His eyes were haunted. "My cousin," he said, his voice hollow. "We grew up in the same house. I taught him how to tie his shoes. I taught him how to shoot." "He wanted your throne," Cassidy said softly, sitting on the coffee table in front of him. Power does strange things to people. And you? Dominic asked, searching her eyes. You have no power. You have nothing. Yet you fought for me. Why? Because, Cassidy reached out and took the glass from his hand, placing it on the table. She took his hand in hers. Because you saw me. Under the bridge, you didn't see a bum. You saw a person. And because I think you're a good man in a bad world. Dominic looked at her hand in his. I am not a good man, Cassidy. I just killed a man in my living room. You saved my life, she countered. Dominic leaned forward. The space between them crackled with electricity. The adrenaline of the near-death experience had stripped away their defenses. You should leave. I should give you $1 million and put you on a plane to somewhere safe. Luca is still out there. He thinks his plan failed because Silas is dead. But he won't stop. I'm not leaving, Cassidy said firmly. If I leave, I'm just a loose end. Luca will hunt me down anyway. The only way I'm safe is if you win. To win, I have to kill my own blood, Dominic said. I have to become the monster everyone thinks I am. Then let's do it, she said. Dominic looked at her lips. Then he looked into her eyes. He saw the fire there, the same fire that made her dive into a freezing river. He couldn't resist it anymore. He leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate, fueled by survival and rage, and a sudden, overwhelming need. Cassidy kissed him back, her hands tangling in his hair. For a moment, the Mafia, the betrayal, and the danger didn't exist. There was just the heat of him. When they broke apart, breathless, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. Okay, he breathed. Okay. We finish this. He stood up, the mask of the Don sliding back into place. Silas is dead. Luca doesn't know that yet. Silas was supposed to call him after the heart attack was confirmed. Cassidy's mind raced, her nurse's brain connecting the dots. The digoxin. Silas said he was supposed to make it look like you died in your sleep. Exactly, Dominic said. He paced the room. If Luca thinks I'm alive, he goes to ground. He fortifies. A war starts. People die. Innocents die. But if he thinks you're dead, Cassidy trailed off. If he thinks I'm dead, he comes out of the shadows, Dominic finished. He comes to claim the empire. He calls a meeting of the capos to take the vote. So we give him what he wants, Cassidy said. She stood up. We fake it. Dominic looked at her skeptically. Fake a death? This isn't a movie, Cassidy. I have to be examined. A coroner has to sign off. The family doctor. Dr. Aris, Cassidy asked. The one you said is on your payroll. He's loyal to the highest bidder, Dominic admitted, but he fears me. Then we use the digoxin, Cassidy said, her voice steady. Not the lethal dose, a subclinical dose, enough to slow your heart rate, drop your blood pressure, make you look clammy and grey. We stage the scene. I call 911 screaming. We control the paramedics. You own the private ambulance company that services this building, right? Dominic nodded slowly, a plan forming. Gold Cross Ambulance. Yes. My men drive the rigs. We bring you to the private wing of St. Jude's, the one you fund, Cassidy continued, pacing now. We control the narrative. We announce your death at 4:00 a.m. Dominic looked at her with awe. She wasn't just a nurse. She was a strategist. Luca will call the meeting for tomorrow night, Dominic said. The right of succession. He can't wait, or he looks weak. He'll gather the 5 families to cement his power. And you'll be the ghost at the feast, Cassidy said. Dominic walked over to the window, looking out at the city he ruled. It's dangerous. If the dose is wrong, I actually die. If the ambulance crew talks, we're dead. I'll administer the dose. Cassidy said. "I won't let you die." Dominic turned back to her. "If we do this, there is no going back. Once I die, Dominic Rinaldi ceases to exist. When I come back, I'll have to burn everything down to rebuild it." "Then burn it," Cassidy said. Dominic pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. "Bruno," he said into the phone, speaking to his most loyal capo. "Get the hearse ready, and tell the boys to wear black. I'm dying tonight." He hung up and looked at Cassidy. "Get the syringe," he said. Cassidy went to the medical bay. She retrieved the vial of digoxin that Silas had tried to kill him with. She drew up a precise, calculated amount, enough to induce bradycardia and weakness, but not cardiac arrest. She returned to the living room. Dominic was sitting in the armchair, his jacket off, his sleeve rolled up. "Do it," he said. Cassidy cleaned his skin with an alcohol wipe. Her hands were steady. She looked at him one last time. "I'll see you on the other side," she whispered. She plunged the needle in and pushed the plunger. Dominic winced. Within minutes, his breathing shallowed. His skin paled. His eyes grew heavy. "It's working," he mumbled, his head lolling back. "Call them." Cassidy picked up the landline. She took a deep breath, channeling all her fear, all her trauma, all her love for the man slumping in the chair. She dialed 911. "Help!" she screamed into the phone, her voice cracking perfectly. "It's Mr. Rinaldi. He's not breathing. Please, someone help." The performance of a lifetime had begun. The headline hit the streets at 5 a.m., striking New York with the force of a gavel. Dominic Rinaldi, 36, dead of heart failure. While the city woke up to a power vacuum, the reality inside the sealed wing of St. Jude's Hospital was far more terrified. Dominic lay on a stainless steel gurney, his skin waxy and cold. The subclinical dose of digoxin had worked too well. It had fooled the paramedics, but now the monitors were screaming. "Pulse is 30!" Cassidy hissed, her hands trembling as she grabbed the reversal agent. Dr. Orris, the corrupt physician on payroll, was frozen in panic. "If I don't inject this now, he stays dead." She didn't wait for permission. She slammed the syringe into the IV port. For 60 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then, a ragged gasp tore through the room. Dominic's eyes flew open, wild and unfocused. He sat bolt upright, clawing at his chest, dragging air into his lungs like a drowning man breaking the surface. "Easy," Cassidy soothed, pushing him back. "You're back. We sold it." Dominic focused, his steel-grey eyes sharpening instantly. "Luca." "He bought it," Cassidy confirmed, checking his stabilizing pulse. "The meeting is tonight at Vesuvio's." A grim, predatory smile cut across Dominic's pale face. "Get my suit. I have a funeral to crash." That night, the back room of Vesuvio's was thick with cigar smoke and treachery. The heads of the 5 families sat around a massive mahogany table, eyeing the empty chair at the head. Luca Vanzetti stood there, wearing a black armband and a mask of false grief. "My cousin was a visionary, but he was weak," Luca announced, his voice smooth. "His heart gave out because he couldn't handle the crown. We need strength now. I claim the seat by blood right." The elders grumbled but nodded. In their world, violence was the only currency, and Luca had plenty to spend. "Then let it be done," an old Don wheezed. "We recognize Luca Vanzetti as—" Boom! The double doors exploded inward, kicked off their hinges. Splinters showered the expensive carpet. Bruno, Dominic's loyal enforcer, stepped through with an assault rifle, followed by 4 masked soldiers. And then, walking through the clearing smoke, came the ghost. Dominic Rinaldi looked like death warmed over, gaunt, pale, haunting, but his presence filled the room like a physical weight. Silence fell. Absolute, terrified silence. Luca stood frozen, his jaw slack. "No," he whispered, backing away. "You're dead." I was. Dominic's voice was gravel and ice. He walked to the table, and the other dons parted like the Red Sea. "But hell didn't want me yet, Luca. I have unfinished business." Dominic stopped directly across from his cousin. "You poisoned my morphine. You cut my brakes. You broke the code." "He's hallucinating," Luca shrieked, sweat beading on his forehead. "Kill him!" No one moved. The other families watched, sensing the shift in power. "Silas didn't die instantly," Dominic lied softly. "He gave you up before he bled out on my rug." Cornered and panicked, Luca made his final mistake. He reached for the chrome-plated pistol in his waistband. Crack! A single shot rang out. Luca jerked backward, a neat hole appearing in his forehead. He collapsed into his chair, eyes wide, before sliding under the table. Dominic hadn't drawn his weapon. He stood perfectly still. Smoke curled from the doorway behind him. Cassidy stood there, holding Dominic's spare pistol with a rock-steady, two-handed grip. Her face was hard, her hazel eyes unwavering. The trembling girl from under the bridge was gone. In her place stood a queen. Dominic looked back at her, fierce pride burning in his eyes, before turning to the stunned room. "My cousin was a traitor. Does anyone dispute my claim?" One by one, the dons bowed their heads. 3 days later, the rain returned to New York. Dominic stood on the penthouse balcony, watching the city lights. Cassidy stepped out behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "The police ruled it a gangland dispute," she said softly. "You're untouchable." "We're untouchable," he corrected, turning to face her. "You could have run when the shooting started, Cassidy. Why didn't you?" "Because I'm done running," she whispered, looking up at him. "I didn't save you just to let you die. I claimed a life, Dominic. I intend to keep it." Dominic smiled, a real, rare smile. He kissed her, deeply and passionately, 40 stories above the streets where they had both almost lost everything. The homeless girl had dragged a monster from the deep, and to survive, she had become one herself, and she was perfectly fine with that. From the freezing waters of the East River to the penthouse suite of the city's most dangerous man, Cassidy Miller's journey proves one thing. Power isn't given. It's taken. She started as an invisible ghost in the gutter and ended as the queen of the Rinaldi crime family. It serves as a brutal reminder that sometimes the person who saves you is the very one the rest of the world walked past. What do you think? Was Cassidy right to pull the trigger and embrace the darkness? Or should she have taken the money and run when she had the chance? I want to hear your theories in the comments below. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It really helps us bring more of these twisted tales to life. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss the next drama. Thanks for watching.